Everybody get together. Try to love one another right now. This is the Community Solutions Podcast. Jason Bradley, Andrew Richter, setting up shop in New Digs for the day, kicking back, being comfortable. How you doing?
I'm okay. We are in seclusion here today at a undisclosed location.
In hiding?
Yes. Maybe on the Richter estate. Who knows? I'm okay. I'm in a little bit of a down mood. You know, we haven't talked since, and I hate to bring sports into this, but we haven't talked since Joe Mauer's retirement.
Yes.
And his very recently deciding to retire at just 35 years old. I mean, he's not retiring because he can't play anymore.
Right.
I'm got my own. I've expressed on Twitter what I think the real reasons are, but I'll just leave that out. And I did get into some debates about. I've always been a fan of Joe. I'm very sad he's retiring. I just think it's a rarity now that today's athletes are quiet and don't go off on social media, don't get in trouble. It just seems like they're not role models anymore. You don't look up to them the way that maybe you once did.
Right.
So I am sad that he is retiring, and I'm getting into the Hall of Fame debates as to whether he'll get into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I'm going to go on the record, and because I make a lot of bold predictions. Most of them don't come to fruition. Yeah, if you don't believe that, see our podcast in August on my predictions in the primary.
Wow.
I'm a little wrong once in a while, but you make your best guess based on the information.
Yeah, you don't take a risk. There's no glory.
Yeah, no guts, no glory. I'm going to say Joe Mauer gets into the Hall of Fame because I think he's going to be judged as a catcher, and with 3 batting titles, 4 Gold Gloves, 6 All-Star appearances, and MVP. There's about 4 catchers in Major League history that can match that.
Carlton Fisk.
Even Fisk falls short.
A little bit.
Johnny Bench.
He was Johnny Bench, obviously.
Punch Rodriguez. And then the other 2 would be Yogi Berra and Mickey Cochran. And I would throw Mike Piazza in there as a hitter. Now, Joe was a better defensive player.
Huh.
So I think he'll get in. I think it'll take a while. I don't think he'll get in till I've got a lot more gray hair. Hall of Fame voters, they're hard to gauge. I mean, there's over 500 of them.
Right. He won't be a first ballot guy
he
at
won't
all.
be. He'll be. I mean, he's not eligible till 2024.
Right.
And the Hall of Fame committee, you never. I'm on that committee.
Yeah.
So I'm the unsilent majority.
Really?
So, so I think it'll be a bit. I think he does get in, but just a sad, just kind of a downer for me.
Yeah.
I just, the Twins have been so. I'm such a baseball fan. They're just so. The roster has just completely turned over. I mean, you don't know who from who is playing, and I just marking the end of a great career. Even though I know with the money he made and all that, he became kind of polarizing here. But I will say, I mean, he is a top 5 Minnesota Twin without question.
Yeah.
I think really only Harmon Killebrew, Kirby Puckett, Rod Carew, Tony Oliva, and Joe Mauer, I think, are probably the top 5.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
and honorable mention to Kent Herbeck,
Absolutely.
Torrey Hunter, Gary Gaetti, Burt Blyleven,
Yeah.
Jim Cott when you talk about pitchers.
Right.
Joe's pretty much up there in everything, and I don't think anybody will wear number 7 again.
Yeah, well, they'll definitely retire it. I think that, like I said, he won't be a first ballot guy. It's hard to gauge how people get into the Hall of Fame. I mean, for anything. It's probably easier to get into the Baseball Hall of Fame than it is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, Rolling Stone ruins everything. I mean, Styx isn't in it. What's with that?
Yeah, but the Ramones are. You go.
The Ramones are great.
I think they're good too, but I mean, I'm not sure. To me, Hall of Fame is.
Oh, they changed everything. The Ramones. I mean, when you look at their cultural impact, I mean, it's huge.
You pay attention to that stuff. I don't. I mean,
Well,
it's just...
and then you have things that aren't rock and roll at all getting into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So
that's true too.
I don't know.
So, is it now the Music Hall of Fame, or are they?
Oh, they're not changing the name. No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Well, they're in Cleveland. Okay, come on, they're in Cleveland.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. I mean, look at all the great things coming out of Cleveland. I mean, you got the Indians and the Browns.
Well,
Yeah.
that list is not the longest. But
The Cavaliers. Cavaliers have had better fate, I
George
guess.
Steinbrenner. He came from
The
Cleveland.
Cavaliers have had a lot better fate than the Browns have.
Yeah, I don't think the Browns could win an inter-squad game. But
Oh, hey, they beat the Bengals this
Did
week.
they?
Yeah, this last week.
sure I got that pick wrong on my picks.
Well, then they beat them pretty handily. So,
Huh.
anyways, enough of that.
Yeah, so
yapping.
I mean, just a little sports stuff. I just got depressed by that, and
Yeah.
it was kind of a downer. I was just hoping I had not seen the last of one of my favorite players.
Well, who knows? Maybe.
But you know, I remember Kirby Puckett's retirement very. I was in college, and I remember he had the eye problem. I think he was the same age.
Yeah.
And of course, Tony Oliva, who blew out a knee, and that you couldn't recover from that back then the way you can now. And
Right.
probably has cost him the Hall of Fame. I
Yeah.
think he would have been there had he not got hurt. And I still think he should be. And he was a great player. And there's Hall of Fame is filled with guys who got injured after 7 or 8 or 9 great years, whether it's Sandy Koufax or
Right.
a player like that. So I don't get how there's no standard for how anybody gets in. It's nuts to me. The catcher with the second most hits of all time,
Yeah.
catcher by the name of Ted Simmons, played for the Cardinals. I remember him with the Brewers. He's not in the Hall of Fame. So I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, is it the Baseball Hall of Fame where the sports writers do a lot of the
Yeah, there's
picking?
over
So
500.
it's like,
15 years you're on the ballot.
yeah. I don't know. Should it really be the sports writers who are picking them? I don't know.
I don't know. The Hall of Fame is a separate entity. It's a 501c3, so I think they can do what they want. As
Well,
far as
absolutely.
that,
But
yeah, I don't know. I don't know how you get it. I'm still trying to figure out how B.J. Surhoff got 5 votes. I don't know, but
wow.
it's just I don't know what you have to do. I should have a vote though, and
Yeah.
every year I do make a vote, even if it don't count. I still make a vote
Oh boy.
because I'm trying to get Bonds and Clemens in the Hall of Fame.
Are you
So it's
voting
still-
illegally? Is that what's?
I guess so. I got my ID if they want to see it. I can prove my residency.
Yeah.
I know Patrick Royce is on it.
You're
so
going
is
to throw
Lavelle
Pete Rose
Neal.
into the mix
Huh?
as well? You're going to throw Pete Rose into the mix as well?
Well, I mean, can you get in the Hall of Fame? No, not as long as he's suspended.
Right.
Those are the rules.
Right.
And, whether you think he should be on there or not. I think he should be in, but I think it should be on his plaque that he was. I think that's a good compromise. He deserves
Yeah.
to be there as a player, but he's a despicable human being, and so
Yeah.
is Ty Cobb. So I don't know.
Right.
I don't know how you reconcile the two. So, yeah, I mean, but I grew up. Let me tell you something. If you look at pictures of me when I was 8 years old when he broke the hits record, and this is back before cable. Didn't have ESPN. I mean, the Twins were on CB radio. I mean,
CB.
well, okay, WCCO was still good, but TV and Midwest Sports Channel barely existed.
Right. They were on Channel 9 a
Channel
lot.
9, yeah. And if you look at pictures of me, I loved Pete Rose so much. I had his bowl haircut. The bowl, you take a bowl
Right.
and put it on somebody's head. That's the
Wow.
haircut. Because Pete Rose, I wanted to be a switch hitter. 'Cause
Yeah.
Pete Rose, that's how I learned to hit left-handed. Because Pete Rose was a switch hitter. He was 9 years old when he became one, and that's what I wanted to do. So I've got, and my dad used to say, look at Pete Rose. He hustles on every play. And I think that's why we keep coming back to him, because he played the game the right way.
Yeah.
And he's just, he never had the most talent, but he had the most heart.
Yeah.
So there's an emotional attachment to him. But yeah, I mean, I think you put him in, but you put a big sign right above it saying, this guy placed bets on his own team to lose. Is it a coincidence that when he quit managing the Reds, they won the World Series a year later?
Right.
So pretty disgraceful, but
Yeah.
I mean, hard to. Somebody got those 4,000 hits, and
Yep. Can't take that away from him.
I don't know what to
guess.
do. He's the Bill Clinton of baseball. I don't know what to do with
Oh
him.
my goodness.
So.
Well, you're kind of right.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
is he sorry that he did it? Is he sorry he got caught?
Right.
To me, that's a Bill Clinton conundrum.
Right.
Are you sorry you did it? Would you still be doing things if you didn't get? Who knows what he's still doing?
Right.
I don't think him and Hillary have lived together since January 19th, 2001.
Well,
Anyhow, I digress.
yeah. Well, at the beginning of the show, quoted some lyrics about coming together, being good old friends.
That's
and-
right. Some Forrest Gump soundtrack material you just played, right?
Yeah, well, that might be in that.
60s music?
Yes, it
I don't know
was.
who sings that. Don't tell me. I know the song so well.
Mm-hmm.
Something my mom would have listened to. Give me a hint.
How do I give you a hint for that? Man, I don't know how to give it.
Sounds like we'll play.
Man, was there? I'm trying to think. Was there a hockey movie by that name?
Hockey movie. Miracle.
No,
Oh. That's not a hockey movie?
maybe I've got it mixed up.
All right, just tell me.
Youngbloods,
Youngbloods.
Yeah.
Youngbloods. That sounds like a Western.
or the Youngbloods. Actually, I think there's a rap group that has Youngbloods spelled much differently, but the Youngbloods or Nirvana took it and put it at the beginning of one of their songs on their Nevermind album.
Really?
Yes.
Huh.
And I don't know which song will show up on the Spotify playlist. You'll just have to go out and check it out for yourself to see which one I picked.
Might be a little Nirvana.
Maybe I'll put them both. I don't know.
I never was a Nirvana fan,
Yeah.
but I do respect what they did bring to music. They did help bring in a genre,
Yeah.
and you got to give it to anybody who does that.
They changed everything, which is kind of like what we're trying to do at the local level. We're trying to change the way that local government operates.
Well, if we manage to do that, we'll accomplish more than Nirvana, I think.
Well, I don't know,
And I'm-
but
Well, I'm just,
Yeah.
maybe not culturally, but
well,
we'll see.
hoping to make some cultural changes. So, anyways, this song is all about coming together, getting together. We're talking about joint powers agreements, where you got
boy.
you got all sorts of friends coming from all sorts of cities and townships and wherever, and getting together and having big old government parties.
Yeah, getting together and creating more government.
But this is something
There
that
is a method to the madness, though, Jay. It's not all BS here.
right.
But I think that joint powers sound great, and the concept needs to be discussed. But as we're going to get into, there's pros and cons, I think, to too many of these things. Now,
Right.
why don't you start here by how does a joint powers agreement define? I mean, who can join one? What does it mean to have a joint powers agreement? Exactly.
Okay. Well, I'm going to dig way back into the Minnesota statutes.
We're going back in time.
Maybe not back in time,
Oh,
but back in the
all right.
statutes.
I won't sing it.
Number 471.59.
Oh, I got that memorized.
Joint exercise of powers. So what it is, it's an agreement of two or more governmental units, and they enter into it through the action of their governing bodies. So you could have a couple of townships, a couple of cities, all of them, maybe the county gets thrown in for good measure, and they all come together for a similar purpose. So sometimes you'll see that as a fire board, or dealing with water, or dealing with other forms of public safety, like a sheriff that's watching over a number of townships and small towns. We'll talk about hospital districts a little later on. There's a whole bunch of reasons to pull a joint powers agreement together, and some of them are elected, some of them are appointed. And so the agreement will stand until it's terminated, and they'll continue to appoint or elect people to that body, which they have access to tax funds and all of that great stuff.
Well, of course they.
Of course
Couldn't be
they
a government
do.
body
No.
unless they were able to spend my money.
I don't know. Some of them do have taxing authority, and some of them don't, and they just get taxes appropriated to them, and we'll talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah, a taxing district has another set of statutes that's surrounded. I don't recall what that was at the time, but yes, joint powers agreements. happen to, sometimes they do. I don't want to say decrease the amount of government because they kind of create government, but they may save money.
They might. Yeah.
A joint fire board is a good example. We have, of course, that Crystal and New Hope have one. Champlin and Anoka have one.
Mm-hmm.
You have one fire chief for 2 cities. You have one deputy for 2 cities.
Yeah, and they spread the fire stations out between the 2 cities usually. Then
and usually the funding, I believe, is based on 911 calls. I think that there's a formula used as to how often the departments get what city pays the most. I know that's true in West Metro. I think Crystal actually pays more than New Hope. Joint powers agreements are beneath, however, city councils, for example.
Right.
I'll just use West Metro as an example. We can use other ones. We can use the joint water one, which I'm sure we'll get to with New Hope, Crystal, and Golden Valley. That they come up with they hire the fire chief. Fire chief hires the people underneath, and the board will pass a budget for the fire department that has to be approved by the city council. So, in other words, it is not operating separately. It is subject to the approval of the councils above them. So, now that's one example.
Right.
A joint powers agreement could be almost anything.
Yes.
Almost. I mean, you could make it a township and a city could make a joint agreement about something.
Yes.
It can have an expiration date. It may not.
Right.
There's joint powers agreements between cities and sheriff's offices for public safety purposes, like you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So these joint powers agreements are all over. I mean, I don't even know how many there are in the state. I mean, you couldn't even.
Right.
I'm not sure you could even calculate it. Now, the negative, if there's a negative, Jay, it is that I don't like creating another entity of government.
Yeah.
And secondly, I think things can get spread too thin. And I question whether public safety is necessarily where this ought to go. Especially when you consider something like, I'll give you an example. Take all of these cities that have their own recreation departments, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Why isn't that an area where a joint powers agreement would be a smarter use of taxpayer money? Public safety is a state mandate. Okay?
Right.
Counties and cities are, again, what we spend on it. But it is pretty much a mandate, especially at the county level. Sheriff's office is something they have to do.
Right.
Why isn't it that something like recreation, which are amenities that we all enjoy, ball fields and pools and things like that, why is it that you don't see many of them entering in joint powers agreements?
Yeah, you don't see a lot of it. You see cities kind of competing for some of that. I mean, there is some of it, and I don't know how much is set up on joint powers. We read a story in the local lowdown recently about Albertville and St. Michael that were entering into some sort of agreement for a hockey arena.
Right.
I know.
Yeah, they were entering an agreement to get bonding from the state.
Yeah. You have Crystal and New Hope who you buy a pass to one pool, you can go to the other pool. They don't really have a powers agreement for that. They just share it. Right. I mean, and that's a great argument, too. I mean, why can't cities just form alliances like that without forming a board to oversee it?
Well,
depending on what it is.
True, it can get big enough to where you have to have something. But I look at everything kind of cost-benefit. You've got every city with a recreation director, an assistant, a recreation department, and I think, okay, in the long run, is that, and then every city wants their own pool, their own community center, their own amphitheater, their own hockey rink, their own back scratcher, their own jock sniffer. They want every single thing, and there's, like you said, it's almost a competition rather than, okay, wait a minute. Crystal's got a community center that, despite being 20-some-odd years old, is pretty nice and very underutilized, in my opinion. I think it's
Right.
gotten better under the new, I shouldn't say new council, but the last 5 years, since Mayor Adams has been there, I think it's gotten better with
Right.
the Crystal Ball and a few other things that they've done there. But Golden Valley is building a community center for like $16 million. New Hope is building a new everything over there, including a pool.
Right.
Why doesn't New Hope just shut their pool down and say, look, just there's a very nice pool right in Crystal?
Well, I'll tell you, that pool does get pretty full.
Oh, it does, but it's a nice, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a good, it's one of the best pools around, to be honest.
It is, yeah.
Despite all the peeing in there.
Wow.
It is, it is. You see a kid in the corner looking around, then you know what he or she is doing. Or if they're an adult, too.
Yeah, if it's clouding up, stay away.
Well, the water gets warm. No, I'm kidding. But but the kind of it just kind of brings to the point of, okay, well, at what point do Brooklyn Park doesn't have a pool? There's 70,000 residents there.
Right.
So I mean, how do you not look at recreation as something where cities, ball fields and things like that can be that I think are underutilized too. I mean, there's so many parks. You look at Crystal alone. I believe there's 26.
Yeah.
And how many of them are just empty? And Crystal's responsible for all the maintenance, all of the, at some point it's like, okay, if there's a better way to utilize these things, why aren't we thinking outside the box and doing that? Maybe they are, and I don't know it, but
I think there's a lot of, in government, this is the way we've always done it.
yeah.
So until somebody comes along with the next best thing, this is the way we're going to keep doing
Until
it.
somebody parachutes in with a machine gun, we're not going to change what we're doing. Figuratively, of course.
yes.
But, I mean, yeah, right. There's no. But we're going to get to a point though where you can't really, you just can't tax people anymore.
Yeah.
You're going to get, to a point where the city isn't going to grow anymore. Well, we're at that point in a lot of cities. So aren't they going to have to start thinking a little bit more about this stuff? I mean, this is, if anything, we're going to head towards more of this rather than less.
And I think we're overdue, long overdue, for an economic downturn. And I think that as we're looking at going into something like that, we really need to conserve our taxpayers' money at the city, county level.
You think we're long overdue?
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
I don't know.
They're usually every, 7 years or so?
Every 8 or so.
And it's been, since 2007? I mean, we're at like 10,
Well,
11 years.
I would argue the economy didn't really recover
that's
until
true.
about 12 or 13. And even
That's
then,
true.
we were only having about 1.5% economic growth. I think it's been the last. But you're right. At
Yeah.
some point, housing prices aren't going to be going up 10% a year. That's nothing infinitely keeps going up and up and up.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, at some point there is. I think the tax cuts probably staved that off for a while.
Right.
I'm hoping it's not till 2021 that anything happens. But, no, you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, historically, if you go back to stagflation of Jimmy Carter, then you go to the recession under George Bush 41, then you go to the dot-com bubble,
Yep.
then you go to the
Housing bubble.
housing bubble of 2008-ish.
Yeah.
And jobs are always a lagging indicator. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you're right. I mean, maybe we are. Maybe we're bucking a trend here. I don't know, but it's coming at some point.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. But yeah, we're going to have one, so they're going to be at a point where they got to just stop spending. But these boards, I mean, there's a couple of things that concern me. One thing I don't like is when you make a board and it's made up of people already serving in government.
Well, yeah.
I mean, that's something that, to me, that's no different than we're going to do the Botno Boulevard partnership, or we're going to do the what's the project out east?
Gateway.
Gateway. We're going to do that. We're going to do the CTIB, and yet who's on the CTIB? Well, it's all the people who are on the county board anyway. So
Right.
you have the same people serving, and a lot of these joint powers, things like watersheds are a little bit different, although sometimes they appoint themselves to that.
Sometimes they do.
Some cities do, some cities don't. We've talked about the citizen appointments on certain boards where, council's appointing themselves as the citizens. So is there a danger in that? Is there a danger in having, a bunch of little city councils? I mean, if the city council is going to approve a joint powers budget, but the city council pretty much makes up the joint board,
Yeah.
then it ceases to be an independent entity, in my opinion.
Right. And you don't always have the different entities always, playing. I don't want to say fair. What's the word that I'm looking for? But I hate to keep going back to the same cities. But this is where we got our start. You go back to the West Metro Fire Board, and you had New Hope who would approve the fire budget, and then you had Crystal under Mayor Renee Bowman she would go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and she would, throw fits about things. And
well, with Bowman, I don't know if it was the budget; it was more other
the
stuff,
chief,
but yeah.
yeah. But I mean, there were issues though with wanting to fund them and giving them money. I remember something about like a new, was it like a defibrillator system at one time, and she didn't want to fund for that. And I'm not saying you give carte blanche to these entities to get what they need, or what they want, rather. I mean, they obviously need certain things. But, I mean, that's kind of a strange nuance where you might have one city that says, yeah, we're gonna give 100% of what you've asked of us. And then you might have the next city that says, we're going to give you 75% of what you've asked of us, which can play a little bit with the budget as well.
It can, but, I mean, to me, disagreements are, anytime you merge two things together, it's kind of like a marriage.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a strange analogy, but, city budgets, as much as we talk about them, aren't always the same. City councils, I think it's probably more extreme now than it's ever been. When you look at what's going on in New Hope and you look at what's going on in Crystal, they couldn't be going in more opposite directions.
Oh, absolutely.
So, if they disagree about something at the fire department, I think with Mayor Bowman, of course, everything became a personal struggle. It was more about griping and whining and complaining than it was about anything else. At the same time, I actually, as strange as it is to say, I don't think Mayor Bowman was totally out in left field on everything.
No.
But the fire board reaches a decision. They take that decision to the councils. If there's disagreement there, it has to go back to the board. And that's the way the joint powers agreement works. So,
right.
You're right. If there's, but again, to me, if you're going to make a joint powers agreement and you're going to enter in with the city, you got to have a long-term vision for that joint power, or it's always going to be like a husband and a wife bitching at each other all the time. It's going to be like that.
Right.
So, I don't know. But West Metro aside, I mean, Champlin and Anoka have a joint fire department.
Yeah, they do.
Maple Grove entered into an interesting joint power with Corcoran.
Yes, Corcoran.
Johnny Corcoran? Is that
Yes.
out there over some road that they both maintain? Or the road, I don't.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a little familiar with the area.
I'm really not. But,
yeah.
To me, Corcoran is 100 miles away, but it's actually like 10.
Yeah, it's really not that far. It's right on the other side of Plymouth, out by 8, as far south as like Hamel and stuff like that.
Yeah, by the Medina.
Yeah, coming all the way up towards Maple Grove there.
But their joint powers agreement is about the maintenance of Brockton Lane. Mm-hmm. There's development going on over there, and who is going to split the construction and maintenance costs of that road. I will say that does happen sometimes on roads that border another city. If it's not something that is under the jurisdiction of MnDOT or something like that, for example, like 169 is a border between New Hope and Plymouth. But, of course, between Crystal and New Hope, there's... Explain that border to somebody? Yeah. So
Yes.
there are things. I know in Crystal, when they did the phase plans out in western Crystal, there were some agreements with New Hope, who was going to maintain one side of the road. There was I forget the street, but when you are exiting by St. Rayfield's there,
Yes.
and before you get to Winnetka, there was a street, I think it was Sumter Avenue maybe, or Rhode Island, that divided and Crystal and New Hope, and there was a plan to put a sidewalk somewhere, and neither side wanted the sidewalk. New Hope didn't want it on their side, Crystal didn't want it on their side, despite
Right.
all the active living, and they ended up not doing it. They couldn't reach an agreement.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if that's a joint power, but it's like, okay, you know, if we're going to tear down this street and half the street belongs to New Hope, you know, you need to discuss that. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think in that instance it was, but in this instance with Corcoran and Maple Grove, you have that. Another one, watersheds. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. Minnesota has 45 watershed
and
districts.
that's a show in and of itself.
Yeah, we're going to have to do a show getting into what they are, what they do. But Minnesota has 45 of these watershed districts. And
But, Jay, they have watersheds and they have a water management association.
Right.
Now, are those two things the same? Oh, the hell with it. We'll leave it for another show.
But
you're right. Sometimes they're joint powers. Sometimes they're a separate entity. Minnesota law allows for both, right?
Right.
So,
with these, you'll have it named after the main body of water, and then everything that runs into that will also be a part of the watershed. So there's 45 of these across the state. They don't completely cover the state, but they are governed by a group of governmental people, sometimes appointed. I think actually almost always appointed in the instance of a watershed.
I'm
Sometimes,
pretty sure,
or they're elected people to a city council or a county that get placed on those watersheds.
possibly Soil and Water might serve on that, too.
Yeah,
There'd probably be a
they
county
definitely
seat.
work with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm surprised there aren't more than that. I mean, considering how many lakes and creeks and rivers
Right.
and things like, I know all the tributaries are part of it too, but it amazes me there's only 45. I mean, Minnesota is the cold weather California. You'd think that there were hundreds of these.
Yeah, well, there's 14 of them in the metro alone, and then the rest of them
I
are
wonder
kind of
if
out
soil
on the
and-
western.
I wonder if
part of the
Soil and
state.
Water takes care of that in some of
They might.
greater Minnesota.
They might, and I think most of them deal with rivers or or creeks, things like that.
Tributaries.
Yeah, I mean they don't really deal with lakes a lot. Sometimes they do. There's one like for Comfort Lake, Forest Lake here in the cities, but also Prior Lake, Spring Lake has one. But there's a lot like around the Lower Minnesota River, 9 Mile Creek, the Sandmill
Minnehaha,
River.
I think has one.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. Rice Creek has one. So, yeah, there's a number of them that most of them are out on the western edge of the state. There's a couple right on the southern border with Iowa. A couple of them that are on the eastern border, but not part of the St. Croix. And that's what's strange. The Mississippi River does not have one.
I guess everything flows into the Mississippi
Right,
River, so they
but
don't-
and I've tried to find out. There has to be some sort of oversight over the Mississippi. When you're talking about clean water and all that kind of stuff, I haven't really been able to find it. It looks like the U of M has a great deal to do with the Mississippi, but it doesn't look like there's any one entity that governs.
you just wonder if the Mississippi River is just so big, so long, so going over all of all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico.
Right.
Interesting thing here on the Bassett Creek Watershed Management Commission, which is interesting, I guess you could call it that. How they do that. They have got quite a few members.
Yeah, some of our favorite cities are in that one.
One of our favorite guys, Dave Anderson, is on it.
Still.
From Crystal. He is serving till 2021. There's a vacant spot, I should say this, for the alternate.
Yeah.
Golden Valley has somebody I don't recognize. Let's see who else is on here. John Elder from New Hope, of course.
Oh, of course.
They appoint themselves.
Yep.
Jim Prom from Plymouth. I know he's on the city council.
Yes, he is. Just got reelected.
Yep. I don't know who Michael Scanlon from Robbinsdale is. And I don't know the person from St. Louis Park either. But so once again, they are getting on there and appointing themselves. Except for Crystal, I should say. I mean,
right.
Dave Anderson was on the council. He was not. Guy Mueller used to be. I think he moved. I don't think he lives in Crystal anymore.
Right.
So Dave must have been appointed after that. But there is an alternate that is vacant. If anybody's interested, I guess just to throw out, when we talk about throwing out things like that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're interested in trying to serve on any of these, you can Google the Minnesota Watershed Association. Or just type in mnwatershed.org and find out if you're in a watershed district, and then figure out how to get a hold of that watershed district. So
absolutely, and we should also mention that Joint Water Commission is another thing, separate from that, separate from a watershed, separate from another joint powers. We have a JWC over here in Crystal, New Hope, and Golden Valley, and that's a result of our friends in Minneapolis trying to charge the suburbs for a backup water supply that they were going to create.
Right.
Cities took it among themselves to do it themselves, and the three cities they actually have about a $4 million budget. I know that. Between the three cities to fund a backup water supply, and that is, I don't know if that's an annual thing or what, but basically, the western suburbs went on the system, quote unquote, back in 1963, and the western suburbs have pretty much been getting their water from Minneapolis ever since, from the Mississippi River, and that's when all the wells were capped and all the all the aquifers underneath us have been off limits to anybody who wants. You can't get a building permit unless you use the water and sewer that the city provides. But the backup water supply, it's 4 wells that Crystal, New Hope, and Golden Valley decided to dig up for use in case of an emergency.
Yeah.
So we have a backup system in case anything happens. But that's another thing. I don't know that they it is a joint powers agreement. I don't know if they have a board or not. I assume they do, and it's probably made up of the same folks that we normally have. Joint water. Hey, I get the answer. These things just come to me. Guess who the Joint Water Commission members are?
Let's see.
Look,
in New Hope, it's John Elder.
Okay, that's a good guess. They actually are the 3 city managers.
Oh.
From the 3.
No,
Ann
I
Norris,
don't think
Kirk McDonald had a farm, and Tim Krusna-Snushnek from Golden Valley. So.
I don't think I like that. These are employees of the city, but yet they're being appointed to a governmental body to make decisions.
Subject to city council confirmation, but yeah.
Still,
it's leading the city council.
I don't like it. I don't like it one bit.
I don't like anything. I just got to say that straight.
Okay. Another example down the Southwest Metro, they have a drug task force. I don't think they're the only one in the state. It is a joint powers organization. And with this, their voting membership is the Carver County Sheriff's Office, the McLeod County Sheriff's Office, the Scott County Sheriff's Office, Hutchinson Police Department, Jordan Police Department, Prior Lake Police Department, Shakopee Police Department, South Lake Minnetonka Police Department, and Belle Plaine Police Department.
Wow. That's quite an area.
Yeah. Now, I would assume that the representatives are all from those police departments, and not citizens either. Now, should they be? And how sensitive information do they have to deal with? I don't know, but yeah. And so there are a number of these drug task forces around the state. I know Duluth has, it's part of a Lake Superior Drug and Gang Task Force, Joint Powers Agreement, so you can throw the gang part in there as well. So they have that deal, and because it's Lake Superior, it'll go up the shore a little bit. It'll probably include, I don't see like a website, but I would assume it would include Proctor and Hermantown and Cloquet, Carlton,
all that places
stuff.
Duluth wants to annex.
Well, those are cities. I don't think they'll get to annex those. But you're right. It'll have the townships in there too. You'll have Midway. You'll have Solway. You'll have all of those. Rice Lake is. Did they become a city? That was
I
quite
think
a while
that
ago,
was one that was trying to incorporate last I heard of it.
They were. And I wonder if they include Superior, Wisconsin in that as well. That I don't know how that would work between states, but they may have to have their own. They may just be out of luck.
I don't know.
If you're in a gang and you do drugs, go to Superior. That's the story on that.
Stay in one state. That's kind of the message here. I mean, I think the whole thing people need to take from what we're saying is there are a lot of these.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned hospitals, Jay. What's going on with hospitals?
Well, maybe you have not heard of a hospital district. That's a special taxing district. We actually mentioned that in a prior show that we had on special taxing districts. We really didn't get into it a whole lot then. But, yeah, a group of townships and or cities can get together and form a special taxing district for a hospital. Now, there are county hospitals, there are public hospitals, there are nonprofit hospitals. Well, this falls under the Minnesota statute where you can form a joint powers organization and you can form a nonprofit corporation in order to do something like a hospital, but it's governed by this shared or joint powers agreement, which with a hospital district.
So now hold on a sec. So
yeah.
a hospital district, there's a hospital,
right,
and there's like a district around that of so many miles or
right.
something. Mm-hmm. And they have a taxing authority.
Yes, they do.
Or they can.
They can tax. Yes, they have taxing authority.
On property taxes, or would that be?
That would probably be, because what was, think of some of the other special taxing districts, like Three Rivers. They have their own taxing authority.
Watersheds have them too around here. Some of them do.
Some of them do, yeah.
Shingle Creek, when I lived in Crystal.
Yeah. So
you pay them too. Hate to tell you.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, so they do have their own taxing authority. I mean, because it's a special taxing district.
I mean,
well, it's a government organization that is formed by cities and townships, and they band together voluntarily and enter into this joint powers agreement.
You're taxing me, and ain't voluntarily.
Well, no, but they voluntarily get into power with each other, and and what the taxes pay for are basically hospital services, and I suppose any kind of renovations and growth.
Would it be like also like infrastructure around that, perhaps? Parking ramp, extra road, turn lane.
Yeah, whatever they need. I suppose that whatever they need. There are a number of them in Minnesota. And they're kind of spread all over the state. Most of them are, and they're not in the metro area.
Well, of course not.
Right.
Outside Minnesota doesn't have a lot of northern Minnesota doesn't have a lot of watersheds, don't have a park district, so they have to have something to tax people
Right.
with, right? It's just not fair that they don't pay as much as people in the cities.
Right. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of amazing because if you live in a hospital district, and I don't know if you've ever noticed this when you voted, but you elect people to the board of the hospital district. And as with most things that nobody knows anything about, people run unopposed in these races, and they're making decisions with your tax dollars.
So it's like a township, a soil and water.
Yeah. People in the township probably know a little more about their town board.
Well, that's true. But as far as like unopposed elections go, you and I have gone through township clerks, treasurers.
Yep.
Many of those things are
county
elected
attorney.
County attorney. A lot of sheriff's races have become contested recently, but I think that was one where sheriffs, a lot of them ran unopposed too. It's just another one of these races that you have to pay attention to.
Yeah, and so we need to find people to step into those races as well, because the hospital districts do have authority to levy taxes on all the taxable property within the district, and it can go for hospital improvements, capital equipment purchases, creation of new services. They need that new heart monitor or whatever it is. The new
restaurant
machine
inside that serves crappy food. Yeah.
Exactly. It can go for that. It can go for filling potholes. It can go for,
they got a wide discretion.
We need to build a parking ramp. Yeah. It could go for all.
Well, a parking
of that.
ramp they'd have to have bonding authority for that, because who's got the cash to build a parking ramp?
Right.
No hospital district would have that kind of budget. They have to bond it.
Probably, yeah. But then that you would have to pay that back through the taxes that they
and then you'd have to pay the interest, the whatever that's. It's slipping my mind. Whatever that's called on the budget, but the interest that every year that is paid on the debt would also have to be dealt with too. Wow. I mean, and a special taxing district probably doesn't have anything above it. There's no city council watching over it saying,
no, I'd assume not, and it's possible that there's some sort of county intervention, because you have a lot of health and human services advisory commissions and stuff at the county board.
I wonder if it's for counties that maybe don't have a county hospital.
Right.
Like a lot of counties have that. I mean, Hennepin, of course, does. And so, you instead a hospital district is for it, you pay for it either way.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly it. If you have a county hospital, you have the county hospital, but this is a group of cities and townships getting together and saying, let's have a hospital.
Come on, get together now.
Yep. Smile on your brother, everybody. Yep. Yeah, good times. Dynamite. But yeah, I mean, the good thing about the shared power or joint powers agreements, I mean, they are subject to the open meetings laws. Trouble is, most of their meeting minutes are terrible, and they're almost never recorded.
They're awful.
Yeah.
Some of them are half decent. I will say Champlin and Anoka Fire Department, as bad as they are at putting stuff online, they do have their meetings on cable. You can go, I think it's QCTV. It's Coon Rapids, Anoka, Ramsey, and Champlin, I believe.
Yeah.
West Metro, for example, does not have television, but they do keep pretty good notes. Thankfully, that's how we've gotten a lot of the info on them that we do. So
yeah.
The minutes are pretty good. And the agenda packets and things are online. Some of them meet monthly, some of them don't.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, again, these things can end, we should say.
Yeah.
A joint power It depends how bad it could be when they end.
Well, it can cost an entity a lot of money, too, when they were talking about possibly dissolving the West Metro Fire Board. Each city then would have had to go and buy additional fire engines and
they would have had to buy all new ones because all of them say West Metro.
Right.
They probably would have had to sell those off or rechristen them or whatever, buy all new uniforms, rehire. Everybody would lose their job.
Two chiefs instead of one. Yeah.
The 3 fire stations would somehow have had to be split up, with 2 of them in Crystal and 1 of them in New Hope.
Yep. New Hope probably would have had to build a second one.
Probably. I mean, because of the strategic way they were all located.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's like going through a divorce. I mean, you got property you have to split up. You got kids going from one. It's not much different than that. So these things can get and look, joint powers agreements all sound great, and I'm for looking into them. But Jay, it can get, like we mentioned, it can get too big. I think people closest to a problem are the best people to solve a problem. So I think while these things are great to look at and think about and should be considered, I'm not sure it's always the right decision to enter into one.
Right.
So how do we distinguish between what's good and bad? It's just on a case-by-case basis.
It is on a case-by-case basis. We have always said that there's no one cookie-cutter solution, to a lot of these things.
Well, and I'm gonna throw out another thing that's kind of on the subject and kind of not. School districts. I mean, I have talked time and time again about how there's way too many school districts in the state.
Right.
And you look at Greater Minnesota, a lot of them have voluntarily combined. I don't know if it's that there's fewer kids or it's just too expensive or what the reason is. I mean, I'm sure it's different in every place. But I look around at, say, like the Brooklyn Center School District, then you see 4 of the largest school districts in the state surrounding that.
Yeah.
Robbinsdale, Osseo, the Anoka, Hennepin, and Minneapolis. And it's kind of like, okay, why is this district there?
Yeah.
And, how do you, if they don't want to dissolve, nobody's going to make them. So, what's the future of something like that? Because I think, to see how many school districts there are is, at the same time, it can get too few.
Right.
And you get spread too thin.
Well, that's
so
it.
Where's the happy
do
medium?
you want to be lost in some sort of huge... I think... I don't know. I don't think the state should be mandating that stuff.
Yeah, I don't either.
I think that localities should be deciding what's best for them, and if they want to have and can support a smaller district, then great. The people of that area can support that district, and and anyone else. If you go through some sort of a voucher system, you have other people that could come in and support that. If you look at the history of the school district, though, in the state of Minnesota, when it was nothing but townships, we're talking way back before it became a state, when Minnesota was a territory, and in the early days of it being a state, that every township had its own school district, and every time that township got above 5 families, the school district had to split, and you had to start another school district. But so we have way fewer school districts, in that respect. But yeah, I think it's got to be kind of a free market thing. And if you want to be part of a smaller district, then you open enroll and you go to a smaller district. If you want to be part of a larger one, you put your kid in that district. And, I think having choice is a good thing.
I think it is too. I question
everything to that.
Yeah.
Private,
but maybe the state shouldn't be making that decision. Maybe they could create law that would make it easier, help the circumstances if a district chose that.
Yeah.
Maybe create incentives to do that. I think I don't want the state doing that either.
Right.
At the same time, I don't want 360 some odd school districts and nobody thinking for 1 minute, okay, this is my territory and I'm going to try to keep my kids out of your district And, there's a lot of that going on.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the Osseo district has this. And,
Yeah.
it's
All
the
the
same,
privileged kids go to Wayzata.
right, it's
Yeah.
the same thing
Yeah.
with the cities. They're all trying to out impress the Joneses.
Yeah.
And so how do we get them to stop doing that and kind of say, okay, wait a second here. Unfortunately, with so much money tied to funding, money tied to enrollment,
Yeah.
it makes that difficult not to do that. But, I agree, competition, and I use that term loosely in the public school district because they wouldn't know competition if it
Right.
landed on their face and started to wiggle. But, same time, you have districts with declining enrollment. You have districts closing buildings down. And at what point do we go, okay, you know what? We see the pattern here. This just ain't going to work.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. I don't want a state law. It's kind of like, I want everybody to be a charter city. I don't want the state to mandate it. I want even year elections everywhere. I don't want the state to pass a law.
Yeah.
Then the cities all have a boogeyman in the room to blame.
Right.
So how do we change those circumstances, and at the same time ensure that it doesn't get too thin?
Right.
So.
Yeah, great question, and that really you can ask that of any kind of a joint power. Is when is it too much? When is it too little? When is it the right amount? And that's just one option. I know libertarians have floated for a long time the thought about, well, why can't we just fix our own roads? Why can't we just pay a private company to fix the roads? Why can't we pay a private company to do security for the city? Why can't we? And I think that there are some pluses and some drawbacks to that. I haven't ever seen it in action. I'm not saying it won't work. I kind of I trend in that direction anyways. I think when you have people though that don't want to put their money there, but they'll more than happily drive on the roads, that's where you start to run into a problem. Somebody's house burns down and they didn't want to put in for the local private firefighting company. Well, then your house doesn't get put out if it's on fire. I mean, your house doesn't. The security company doesn't come to your house if you don't pay for the security company to come to your house when somebody breaks in.
I don't know. I don't know how to mandate equality. I don't know how that works. But I am for experimenting with stuff like that. I mean, we talked about what's going on in Crystal now about private financial, not having a city money geek. Now they farm it out, and that's pretty innovative when you look at the state as a whole. Not many of them do that. City attorneys, cities don't have them anymore. They make a contract with a law firm, and however many hours they use, however many hours they get billed.
Yep.
So is that a way to do something? Is security something maybe you can try that as an experiment? 1 year contract with somebody, see what happens. If it's a disaster, for the end of 1 year, you don't have to hire anybody, fire anybody, do anything. I don't know. I mean, is that something to look into? I
mean, when you think about how much like para is bankrupting cities and pensions and things like that.
Oh God!
If you had private contractors, you would not have that issue.
Well, if you went to defined contribution plans rather than defined benefit plans, that issue would be solved altogether.
Well,
but that's something that has to happen over a long period of time.
Absolutely.
But, I some of that I like, some of that I don't like. I mean, I think public safety. I think when you dial 911, I'm not sure it should be based on how much you paid.
Right.
So we have equal protection under the law. So I don't know. I don't know that you talk about roads. A lot of things are private companies that make bids on some of this stuff. Yeah. It's not MnDOT or somebody who does everything.
Right.
So, could there be more of that? Sure. But again, if something's substandard, who works the bill over for that? I'm sure it's in an agreement somewhere, but it's. I'm for experimenting with that stuff. I'm not just sure how much how far you can go with that.
Yeah.
Government has duties constitutionally. Cities have them in their charter. Again, how they go about them is one thing, but I think that you have to be open-minded to how to do things. You just
Absolutely.
have to be.
Well, I mean, at any rate, you look at these joint power agreements, and they all have boards. They're filled with appointed people. They're filled with elected people. Regardless, they're all part of Team 20K. They are, you look at the 30,000 appointed and elected seats across this state, and they all fit under that umbrella. And I'm talking at the local level here. And so it is important for us to understand what these joint powers are, the different types of joint powers agreements, where these joint power bodies are located, from hospital districts to watersheds to fire boards to any of it. It's important because we've got to get people to staff those things that think like us, because tax money is at risk here. The money comes out of your wallet, goes to these folks, and they decide what to do with it. And you're just letting other people make decisions for you, and you don't even know how responsible they are with your money.
Well, and it's all Team 20K, like you said. It's all getting appointed to these is a little bit different than joining a commission. It's a little bit different than that.
Yep.
But again, you got to fill them. And if there's vacancies somewhere, and you are somebody who wants to serve or know somebody who does, these vacancies need to be filled. If there's elected offices, that's no different than we've talked about soil and water. We've talked about township clerks and treasurers. We've talked about that at the county level. All these offices that are down the ballot that people, they go to vote for the top of the ticket, and then the further down, the less they know. And it should be the 100% opposite.
Right. And these hospital district races, most of them were unopposed. In fact, I saw some where write-in candidates won because nobody was running in the race.
Well, then I wonder, because I did 3 write-ins on my last election.
I don't know that any of those 3 would have got.
I voted for Daffy Duck, Harry Arm, and Seymour Butts. That's who I voted for.
Really? Seymour Butts.
Yeah, and the races: Hennepin County Attorney, Plymouth City Council, and I believe I did it on the County Commissioner race because I am not in Jeff's district. I'm not in District 7 like I thought I was, and I was when I lived in Champlin. So it was Seymour Butts, Donald Duck, and Harry Arm. Harry. It's a real guy, Harry Arm.
I'm sure he is. Sure he is, and I'm sure he's bummed that he only got the 1 vote. But yeah, it's ridiculous. If there are races out there that are running unopposed, if there are races out there where a write-in candidate wins because nobody's running in the race, we need to step up and we need to do our part, Minnesota. I mean, we cannot just let these races go because your tax dollars are being figured out by somebody that you have no idea what their policies are. And you wouldn't do that with anything else. I mean, state senator or a U.S. congressional race or whatever, these people work with your tax dollars. And
you see their ads on TV every 5 seconds.
Yeah. But yet, because it's a hospital district.
Dean Phillips, I feel like I know him. He's my new congressman.
I almost sent him a Christmas card. No, but, we write these lower races off. But you ever seen how much money goes through a hospital? A lot.
Yeah.
They make a lot of money. And
we'll have a surgery and you'll see it.
Yeah. So it is important to stand up and be a part of all of these positions. Team 20K has plenty of openings, and we're hiring. Well, we're not hiring, but we're helping you get hired, and we're going to help anyone that needs it. So get a hold of us if you want to get on a commission, if you want to get on one of the boards for these joint power agreements, if you want to run, get a hold of us. Let us know what's going on in your community. Whatever, you can do it all at commsolutionsmn@gmail.com. That's commsolutionsmn@gmail.com. We'll be more than happy to help you out. I want to thank you guys so much for listening to us again for another week. We've got another week coming up real soon. So soak all of this in. Yes.
Closing in on episode 100.
That's true.
Sometime in January,
Yeah, if your math is working out. This will be 91.
Okay, so right after my birthday, then we'll.
Yeah, 9 episodes from now.
Huh.
It'll be
Late
big old
January,
100.
probably.
We'll hit the century mark.
On to the archives and the Hall of Fame, the Team 20K Hall of Fame that we have yet to create, is where the archives will go at some point. Be a big file at some point.
Absolutely. Well, that's nothing to sneeze at, coming up with material for 91 shows. I'll tell you what. And they've all been different.
Yeah.
So
And I hate to say, government's so big, we ain't even close to being done.
Oh, that's for sure.
All right.
All right. So get a hold of us. Spread the word. You know the drill. Because we love you, Minnesota. Now it's your turn to get to work.
Take my life, caught a break between the lines. Don't let me be. If I get too caught